Hello everyone and welcome to the Distinct Mastering YouTube channel. My name is Freddie. Today we're going to do something completely different. I have a client that has a song that didn't get released and it's perfect for the channel. I won't get a copyright strike. So this video is going to be made up of two parts. First part is going to be a Q&A. Client, my friend Kyle, who actually helped build this studio. He has some questions about a master, and I'm going to get into the backstory as we get into the video. So I'm going to answer the questions in this video, and then I have a members only bonus video that's going to break down my mixing work and how I ended up adjusting the tracks and the stems to get where I needed to be before mastering. So if you're curious to know how I made subtle moves and adjusted EQs and did things, check out my new membership section in 2025. I have a YouTube supporter tier as well as a supporter tier on Patreon, and then there's a bonus creator tier on Patreon if you want more bonus content. If you like the music that's playing in the background, it's a new one of mine as my alias Freshcobar out on NOS Recordings. Make sure to go check that out. Links to everything are down below. Now let's get into my Pro Tools session and talk about the Split Finger project. Goodbye. Okay, before we jump into the Pro Tools, I just want to give you a little backstory. Kyle and I ran into each other at an event, and he had said he had this song sitting around on his hard drive for quite some time. Wasn't recorded in the best environment. You know, they were doing things as they could, but you know, he wanted to see if I could master the song. I got the song, and then I had some problems with the mix, so I asked him to send me the stem. I didn't do a full-blown mix. I want to preface, I did more of like a stem mix master, where I kind of adjusted some things to just get things balanced better in the mix before I went to mastering. As you may or may not know, a mastering job will always get a better outcome if the mix, and prior to the mixing, the recording or the production process is done at a certain level. The better that level, the better the end result with the mastering will be. It's a stage-by-stage process. That being said, I'm going to dive right into my Pro Tools session after we get through this Q&A, but Kyle sent me a bunch of questions that we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to answer them as best as I can off the cuff. This is not scripted, so let's get into it. Okay, here is the Pro Tools session. Before we get into the questions, I want to just give you a before and after so you can see what's going on. So let's play the final mix for you. Here is the before. Okay, now I'm going to play you the final mastered version. Now, this is not level matched at the moment. I want to preface that. And just so you know, these stem tracks are not playing. It's muted on an aux bus. Okay, so that's an example of the master. Here's what we're going to do. For purposes of demonstration, and especially when you're going back and forth, you should always be level matching. So I'm going to do this quickly by ear so you can see. We decided where we're going. When the world sees its fist down on me, I'm standing tall with emotion. Things got me. I'm singing, look into these eyes. You can see that I ain't no fool, but we got this and it's calm and straight. Oh, yeah. So right about there, that's about balance. And what I'm going to do, and if you're wondering how I did that, I do ear training almost every day, and I've been doing it for quite some time, and I can hear things, and we're going to talk about ear training in this video, so stay tuned. So what I'm going to do real quick is just kind of give you a before and after. Now that they're level matched, you'll be able to compare the differences to the final master from the final mix. So here is the final mix. When the world, let me go back to the vocals here. We're going. When the world seems to clench its fist down on me, I'm standing tall with emotion. And here's the master. Things got me. I'm singing, look into these eyes. You can see that I ain't no fool, but we got the style and it's calm and straight. Oh yeah, it's not your will when you surrender. So as you can see, there's some major tonal differences here, and a lot of it is related to actually just volume. I did do some EQing, and the things I did are really, really light and just smart, calculated moves. If you're curious to know how I got there before mastering and I did the mixing, then make sure to check out the membership area, because I'm going to dive right into this session and go through all of my processing on all of the stems. And if you guys are curious to know more about the mastering process of this project, let me know down in the comments and I'll consider doing a video on that as well. Now, I want to just go ahead and share with you, videos like this can be very tricky because you're not hearing what I'm hearing. You're hearing it with inconsistencies and things that are going on in your room. So this is why I don't think people can really teach mixing over YouTube. Although I'm going to share and show you what I can, I can't guarantee that you're hearing the same thing that I'm hearing. I'm in a tuned environment. I have good monitors, and I'm in a situation that some people, I'm very fortunate, some people may not be in this situation. So although that you're going to see some things here, that doesn't mean that these are going to be answers for you. I just need to preface that, because if you ever do hear someone saying do this and do that, it's never going to be right. It's not the same room, and that's the biggest thing. It's all about your ears. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to have a little discussion on what I like to do when I hear something from clients. Whether that be a mix or master, when they send me stuff for review, I always try to consider what is the 1 or 2 key moves that I could do that will change the game for this mix or master. Mostly mastering, but what is that 1 or 2 key moves? And I mean with EQ. I'm not going to be doing this move with compression or anything like that. But what are the main tonal differences? So from this final mix,
the clench its fist down on me. I'm standing tall with emotion.
I'm hearing a lot more low end and a lot of mid-range.
But we got the style and it's calm and straight. Oh, yeah.
This one's has a lot more clarity. It's brighter. It's just more controlled. That's the final master. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to throw on an EQ, and I'm going to just do 2 moves.
Does anybody know why this chorus has got me from singing? She said this time, yeah,
just that.
feel my pain and suffering.
Opens up the mix slightly. Let's boost some highs. And this is not what I would do normally. I'm just showing you an example. I'm trying to just quickly get close to the master just to show some of the shape differences. So listen, let's go back and forth.
This thing's got me. I'm singing, look into these eyes. You can see that I ain't no fool, but we got the style and straight. Oh yeah.
So we're getting closer.
Chick's got my head in a blender.
So that right there is pretty close. It's not exactly the same, but you get the idea. So there could be some problem areas that Kyle's dealing with in his room, especially with the low end, and we're going to get into his questions next. But this, I just wanted to kind of show you before even doing the full, these moves right here. These 2 moves, though, really kind of changed the game. Let's do this again. And let's go up and smooth this up a little bit.
This thing's got me.
There we go, right about there. See, listen to that honkiness.
It's not your will when you surrender. This fucking chick's got my.
Okay, so now I'm going to get into some questions that Kyle sent me, and we're going to go over these one by one, and I'm just going to answer them off the cuff. Remember, if you're curious to learn how I got from point A to point B, don't forget to check out the members only area, where I have a video for our members that dives right into this mixing. Okay, question number 1 is tips on using drummer tracks, a Logic software feature, and volume of software instruments. They tend to be extremely loud versus recorded audio tracks, so I had to use a gain plugin on all software and drummer tracks. Yes, so I don't use Logic. I can't share an example of this, but it's no different than using a soft synth or a VST or any hardware synth or a guitar for that matter. Whenever you're recording something into the DAW, you're setting the levels. You should consider the same situation if you load up a synth, set the master output so that it's got a good stage with gain as you're leading it into the next plugin or the mixer or whatever. Gain staging is so important, and it can really, really, really screw up your mixing if you don't properly gain stage. Now, I'll leave you a link to some gain staging videos down below, including another one on K-metering. If you're new to K-metering, it could help you out if you have trouble gain staging. Obviously, I'm more of an electronic music producer, but I still run into this with samples. Some of the samples are extremely loud, and I like to bring them down at the sample level, basically, to then mix from there. It just puts everything more on an even playing field. I was doing the K-metering system for a while, but now I kind of do my own thing with ear, and it works for me. I'm able to get a little bit more of a closer to end result mastered, final mix out of my productions. But that takes skill and time, and you have to train your ears to be able to do that. So just to give you some advice, K-metering can help kind of balance things out if you're curious, but just setting your trims on mixers, if you're an old analog guy like me, it's all the same. So gain staging, super crucial. That's what you should do. Turn it down from the actual plugin itself. Next question, tips for multiple guitar tracks that use the same guitar. EQ'd guitar tracks that are layered using same guitar, especially in the mid-range of EQ. Okay, so to answer this question, obviously if you have a wall of mid-range like we kind of saw in the example I gave, a lot of that is related to volume imbalances. And I'm going to share how I fix this in the bonus content, but I also want to mention it's also about how it's recorded. You want to think about composition and arrangement. You don't want a bunch of the same thing playing all at once. It's just going to build up in frequency, and then you're going to have these problems. And if you realize frequency is just volume, so when you start stacking up the same things, it just kind of creates this big mess. It's hard to talk about this stuff, though, once again, because I'm not in your listening environment and you're not in mine, but I'm just going to give you some guiding principles. So at the end of the day, really focusing on the arrangement as well as the tonal characteristics of each guitar is the key. That's going to help you in the mixing process down the road. Remember, every stage feeds each other. Okay, next question. How much to compress a frequency bands knowing it will be done in mastering also? So with this question, I'm not really sure if you're talking about multi-band compression or just compression in general. Regardless, if you're new to compression, I'd advise you stay away from it. You really only need to use compression when you know you need to use it, and it's the hardest thing for people to hear. I do ear training, and one of the things that they train in my training community is compression. So I can hear the compressors working, I can hear the attack and release settings, and most people can't. It takes time. You do have to practice it though, but if you are new, be careful. Try not to use too much compression. You really do need to know what you're doing. I have some cool videos on compression. I'll leave links down below to that as well. My advice though is when you are new and beginning, try not to use too much compression. For me, I only use it when I really do need it. Using too much compression can create a dull and lifeless mix, and that's not what you want. Also, to touch on the subject of the mastering, I'm not using that much compression when mastering. You might be thinking I'm using a lot to get loudness, but that's not true. The most I'm ever using is max 3 dB of compression, and that's more on like heavy dance music, house music tracks, maybe hip hop. If it's like acoustic or rock, I'm probably going 1.5 to 2 dB of compression max. Maybe a little glue just to soften up some of the transients that might be a little brittle on the ears. That's about it, so think of it that way. Also, one big tip, and I made a whole video on this and it kind of got overlooked. I was a little shocked. Compression is multiplicative. So if you want to learn what that means, go check out this other video, links down below. Okay, next question. Should I have any EQ on my master bus? My answer to that is going to be yes and no. I know that's very vague, and remember, I'm just kind of coming off the cuff here. I didn't want to have anything scripted, but when you think about EQ, if you're doing it on the master bus, maybe you're doing some sweetening, things like that, that's great, but maybe you can do that on the tracks themselves. Maybe you can do that on the individual track buses, your drum bus, this, that. Obviously, if you're going to have a sweetening EQ on your master bus, that's up to you. There's no rule, but don't counter move. Like what I mean by that is if you boost 100 hertz and then later you cut 100 hertz, or if you cut 100 hertz out of your kick drum and your drum bus or whatever, and then you're boosting it, you're just counteracting what you're doing, and that's not proper. So I think it's always best to try to get your mix sounding as good as you can before doing any master bus processing. You should kind of think of the master bus as the mastering engineer's work, and try to do everything that you do in the mixing environment, which is the tracks and the buses and the aux sends and sends and returns and things like that. It's a good way to kind of keep the two separated. I'm not saying you can't do a little sweetening at the end if you just need it. Say you got your mix great, but you just need to make a small adjustment to the whole thing. Then do it. But I wouldn't always just throw on an EQ and a compressor on your master bus and start working. This is just not the way to go for me. Now, this is all my opinion. Would love to hear how you guys work. I've heard of top-down mixing. I do work with a limiter when I'm producing. At the very end, I will also maybe do a little sweetening, but I'm mainly trying to do that on the track level. Next question. Mixing in headphones is tough. How can I best set up the sound for good results? Headphones are pretty hyped. They have bass boosts, high boosts, just treble boosts, things of that nature, just to give that listener experience. Try to get some studio headphones. You're not going to get the best in the panning with headphones either, because they operate on a kind of a binaural mode where they're not great for like a stereo image where when you're in a mixing environment like this. I don't personally prefer to work in headphones. It's just my thing. But when you are in a situation where you have to wear headphones, maybe it's at night, maybe you have family, lots of reasons. Maybe you're traveling, maybe you're on a plane. Sometimes I do work on planes. What I would recommend for you is check out SonarWorks Sound ID Reference. And this is room correction software for your monitors, and they have headphones as well. And you could look up your model number, and then what that'll do is it'll create an imbalanced EQ curve opposite of the headphone itself or your room after measuring it with a measurement mic, and it'll counteract. So really the goal with this type of stuff is to get your room acoustically treated so it's as close to zero as possible. The room correction stuff works best when you're within like a plus or minus 6 dB situation. So either way, for headphones though, you don't have that to deal with. And you could just flatten out those headphones with room correction software. Next question. How can I check that a frequency band isn't overloaded or that a specific band isn't lacking? Example being in the mids on the outro when I had to remove some stuff like synth and lower the rhythm guitar to make room for everything else, and eventually sending you stems so you could make it better. Because it wasn't obvious to me when I was mixing, and maybe there's a better meter or use of EQ to give me a better idea of density of the EQ bands. Or is it just a result of a poor mixing environment? My answer to this is going to be part of it's probably the poor mixing environment. Part of it's probably just untrained ears. Unfortunately, that takes time to develop, and no one can teach that to someone. It's something that you have to do on your own. If you are interested in different ear training, leave me comments down below. I can send you some links to some websites. I personally like to use Sound Gym. It's an ear training course that I do almost daily, and it's great. The best thing about Sound Gym, I can tell you, it's dramatically enhanced my ears over the years. As you can see, as of recording this video, I am 98.3% better than most users. And I gotta be honest, that gives me a super competitive edge because I can hear things very accurately and quickly. Now, to touch back on the question, I'm also gonna mention that volume is super important. I have a video on that. I'll leave you a link to that down below. Most of the time, the problems with mixing are related to volume. Panning is essentially volume, just changing the volume on one side and making it appear that it's moving to another side. So first get your volumes right and then try to get your EQs right. Obviously the goal is to try to record it as best as you can. If you get the recording right and the arrangement good where things are coming in and out, things are just going to naturally mix themselves. Gain stage it right. You'd be surprised how all of the technical details like this matter the most. Yes, also it's probably part of the room issue of where you recorded or the room you're mixing in or your headphones. All of that comes into play. So it's just a matter of getting skilled at this stuff. But, that's a hard question to answer because I can't hear what you hear. As far as a tool, you could check out something like Spectrum Analyzer by SIR Tools. This is one I like to use. They have a free version. I like to go to the 1/4 inch RMS Smooth, and I'm just going to play a little bit of this. Actually, I'll just mute it right now. We'll just look. And you can see there's a low end pile up there. You don't see the mid-range as much though. It's really hard to kind of like read these meters per se. So I don't really recommend. You really just need to use your ears. What you can do though is try to learn the frequency bands and learn to pick up if something sounds similar and you're starting to stack things. Do pay attention because then you're probably building up frequency content that you may not see on a tool like this, but to answer the overloading question, if it's overloading, you'll be clipping. So your meters, your peak meters also tell you overall content. But the problem is when you start stacking things, you're not seeing that until a bus or a master bus. So that's where it kind of comes into play. Another one you could check out is the Voxengo Span. This one's completely free, and this is the one I recommend you use for the K-metering scale. So check out Voxengo. Wonderful plugins. They got a lot of free stuff. Another thing you can check out is this tonal balance control by Isotope. I've never personally used it, but this thing is supposed to help people that, to try to get in the ballpark that don't have the listening environment or the trained ears. So this might be something that could help you. Okay, last question. Do you ever use panning instead of volume automation, being that it can have a similar effect, or use them in conjunction? Do I use panning as an alternate? You said instead of volume automation. They serve two different things, although they both are volume. Panning is going to create the sense of space on the stage, whereas volume is going to kind of create the sense of if something's further away or closer to you. So when you think of a stage and you're trying to create that mix and you're trying to give the listener the picture of what's being heard, the panning is going to be the left to the right positioning. It's just going to lower the volume of one side to make it appear louder on the other. But you also want to think about your mono compatibility. You don't want to make things too completely wide or have things go out of phase if you're using like detuning, or maybe you have two guitars and you pan hard left and hard right, and there's some phase cancellation going on. When you sum to mono, you're going to lose that. And there are still things that have mono speakers, like some club systems most club systems are in mono. Some phones, Bluetooth speakers, laptop speakers, etc. can be in mono. So watch my video on mixing in mono. I actually start my template with mono on and I work, and then I go to stereo. I like to pan things in mono as well. That's just something I do. I like to get it all sounding good in mono because I know if it sounds good in mono, it's going to sound amazing in stereo. And so to go back to the question, so do I ever use one or the other? I usually use both. I don't often pan every track in my session. I find that getting wider mixes, sometimes you just kind of make a couple things wide. It just gives you that impression. If you go too wide, it can be bad, especially for the music that I make. But, you know, there's no rules, and rules are meant to be broken. So it's up to you how you want to do it. But I don't use one or the other. I use them both. Okay, so I hope that helps you out. Any more questions, please drop them in the comments. Any of you guys, let me know. If you want to see, I'm going to dive right in the members only video, go right into my mix and show you track by track what I did. And like I said, if you're curious to know about the mastering, let me know. I'll consider doing that as well. Although I don't talk about the mastering stuff because I offer that as a service, I might start exposing some of the tactics that I do and share with you guys. So let me know what you guys want to see. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing if you found this helpful. That like button will help the YouTube algorithm. Dropping me a comment, letting me know what you guys would like to see. And that bell notification will keep you up to date on new videos. Don't forget, if you are interested in supporting the channel, you can check out Patreon or the YouTube membership area. Lots of cool stuff in there. And if you like the music, once again, that's playing in the background, it's a new one of mine on my label Nos Recordings. Links to that are all down below. And remember, there's a ton of video links down below for you to check out. Lots of stuff I did in the past that goes over a lot of these topics, so make sure to go back and check that out. And until the next video, I will catch you on the next one. Peace.